Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with the interview series presented by Consequence of Sound, the Consequence Podcast Network, as well as WFPK at WFPK.org. Thank you so much for checking out the series. You know how these things work. If you dig what you see, please hit that subscribe button. We put out 3 new interviews every single week. It's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. And I know for me, that includes Wyclef Jean, who I've got here. Hello, sir. How are you?
What's up? Well, let me just start by saying I see a guitar behind you. What kind of guitar is that?
I can actually, I don't know. That's the first guitar I ever got. My grandpa, who passed away a few years ago, he gave that to me because he played. It's a pretty generic guitar, is what it is.
Because it looks amazing from where I'm looking at.
Yeah, let me see. I can pull it up here. Hang on. It's
yeah, guitars is my thing.
This is he was a truck driver.
Uh-huh.
And he played, and it's a beat up cheap guitar he just bought somewhere.
Okay, yeah.
And
so crazy. I started off with guitars.
Oh yeah, well,
yeah.
He told me I needed to learn because I had long fingers like him, and so I learned how to play Smoke on the Water with my thumb.
Okay, yeah, that's
But it's not about me. I appreciate you doing this. You've got so much going on. In fact, you've been doing a lot of this lately. I've been watching some of your recent episodes of the podcast that you've been keeping yourself busy, called Run That Back. And it's so interesting, the conversations that you're having here. Why did you start this? Was it just out of like pandemic boredom? And what are you getting out of it so far?
I think a lot of us artists, we definitely suffer from pandemic boredom. Let's start with it's so crazy. I would say like the life of an artist, like who's a performer, like you love writing, but the rush, dude, that you get like when you go on that stage, the rush is just, it's so missed, and the warmth of the connection with people. I don't care what anybody say. And that goes for all of my peers. Like, I don't care if it's like from a Jay-Z to Morgan Heritage in Jamaica. We all feel the same, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a constant miss, I would say artists probably miss. But the podcast, for me, I said it's not really a podcast, it's a conversation. We call it Run That Back. What I was inspired to do, there's a show in London called Live with Jules Holland. So before the COVID, I was like, I wanted to start off these Wyclef jam sessions in my house, like sort of like Daryl's house vibe, you know, like the Caribbean food, and my peers, if they're in town, they just come in, whether sports figures and musicians, and we just have like these crazy jams. And I wanted to do it like a webisode at first. And so COVID happened. And when COVID happened, I was like, nothing should stop us from having conversations, at least, because with the technology, we're fortunate. And so I just lined up a bunch of people that I'm super cool with and some that I just met. And I wanted to make it super diverse, from directors to producers to, to politicians, because, my music reflects all of it. So it came out kind of cool.
Yeah. The one thing I really liked about it, these days, post-internet age, and especially podcast age, it's really easy to demystify an artist, and some artists really want that, like this, I'm just a regular person type of thing, and we all know that, yeah. But the thing I like about yours is it doesn't exactly do that. Everybody I watch on that, I still think you guys are gods of arts still by the end of it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, well, I always say, that's why I said I'm good at conversations, not an interview, because it's sort of like, so what I do is, the way you hear us talking, that's how you talk. That's how we talk when you don't see us. You know what I'm saying? So if anybody would be like behind the wall and observing how, whether if I'm with Steve Harvey having a conversation, or Gunner, or Lena Waithe, or Shaq, this is just how the conversation goes behind the doors. And the idea is, I remember, man, when I was like in high school, and they always was like, oh, so and so is coming to your school, and it'd be like some super big shot, you know what I mean? And I'm in the hood, and they'd be like, yo, this big shot is gonna come give you inspiration or whatever. Whether they're a ball player, scientist, lawyer, musician, you know, I literally like fell asleep in the first 2 minutes because I don't want to know about your success and your accolades. I don't give a shit about none of that. What I want to know is, can you give me a piece of advice? Because I'm working in this pizza parlor and I'm a musician and I just want to quit, but I know I got what it takes to make it, you know? And that's what's incredible about talking to my peers. They give the people like Clive Davis, who's one of the, you know, he's like a godfather of mine, probably literally one of the biggest moguls in the world, period. And from Whitney Houston to Carlos Santana, just Google this dude. He's a beast. And how did you get there, Clive? And when he's talking about the Brooklyn and the Brooklyn in him, and he's giving all of this information, because for artists, the key to it is you can't do one thing. You have to make it a 360. Like you, because you know, everybody and a mama and a mama mama and a mama 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 is a singer. It has a new tech invention. Is the best ball player and like the best cook. So this is like for you to stand out, you really, really got to put it in, you know?
Yeah. No, it's really fun kind of finding those little moments all throughout these conversations that you've been having, but also getting the background, you know, where everybody came from. I want to tie that to something you just did because, you know, you talk about, you know, some influences here and there. And of course, the latest release, I think that you've just put out is a cover, Bob Marley's Is This Love for Amazon. And I know from Marley, I mean, this is someone that you've been carrying the torch for decades now. And I think this is an obvious question, but why does his music still speak to you enough to keep, you know, playing those songs live or recording those songs?
Yeah. So I cover songs that I wish that I wrote. And Bob Marley is one of my idols, as Dylan is. So Bob Marley, I connect with him because coming from Haiti, it's like coming from the way he come from Kingston, you know, and growing up in the favelas, you know what I'm saying? Like with the gun and them, you know, the you know, growing up with the gunslingers, you know, like, you know, growing up where the village has a cemetery right inside of it, you know, and the way that you escape poverty is through imagination. You get me? So Bob Marley music just naturally connects to me. And so leaving Haiti, coming to America, I lived in the projects, Marlboro and Brooklyn. And being like the oldest one out of like 4 at the time, it's sort of like if something goes down, they always like they're gonna get their bigger brother. You feel me? And it don't matter if I weigh $150. I gotta handle my business. So I have cousins that are locked up that ain't coming out no more. Some are deported, you know, some in. It's crazy. So when I look at the Barb, so I even tried to run to become president of Haiti, and I wouldn't do any of that if it wasn't for Bob Marley. So for me, Bob Marley represents a revolution, and it's a different revolution. It's not a revolution of arms. It's a conscious revolution. So for me, it's very important within this modern age when a kid named Young Thug has a song called Wyclef Jean. It's so important that the way that his song is called Wyclef Jean, it's the same way for me. Doing a Bob Marley cover, it's like just I have to constantly put that out there so people never forget. Like the true revolution of Barb is the consciousness, the factor of love, and I felt that we was going through an era where we needed to get back to that.
Yeah, the one thing I appreciate about Bob that I appreciate about you, that I find the similarities in. Like, so different from you, I grew up in rural Kentucky, you know, in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't a social justice thing that I was hearing through his message till much later. It was the types of music that he was introducing me to, not just reggae, but also types of folk. You know, that's what I heard through your music as well. I think because of my age, I probably heard you singing "No Woman No Cry" before I heard Bob Marley singing. You know, that was just the influence there. But that's been something like it's, I don't, like, where did that come from for you, as you alluded to at the beginning of this interview? Because it wasn't that you've just stuck to one type of music. You've done it all, you know, whether it's in hip hop, whether it's in rock, whether it's in folk. Where does that come from?
Well, that entire gumbo comes from the church. So my father was a minister and a Nazarene church. So we grew up like in this gospel Nazarene church where it was about worship. But there was a thing like you couldn't play secular music. So if you was listening to anything other than what was in the church, you literally would be sanctioned. Do you know what I'm saying? So you couldn't play instruments or whatever. So we used to sneak to listen to everything else with the vinyls. And the cool story is being that the denomination literally just spoke Creole and French, and they understood a few words in English like Jesus, Savior. So what we would do is we would listen to all of this mashup. So like we could go from like a Eddie Van Halen jump to Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here. And so now when we playing in church, we just wanted the music to sound cool because we didn't want to like play what everybody else was playing. So literally, as long as we knew the congregation heard the name Jesus, we would get away with it. So I'll give you an example. So we'd be like, go ahead, jump, jump for Jesus Christ. So it started like in the church being, you know, you have kids who love to be on video games. I love the vinyls. I love to be in the stores where the vinyls is at. I love to be in Sam Ash. At 15 years old, I was already playing like over 8 different instruments. And a music teacher discovered me at 15 playing piano in the auditorium with my bubble goose on. And she was like, where did you learn that? And I was like, I hear this in my head. And she was like, do you know how long it takes to learn these chords? And I was like, no, I just play at my daddy's church. She was like, tomorrow you're starting jazz. And I was like, I'm not doing jazz. That's for old people. I'm going to be a battle rapper like LL Cool J. And so tomorrow was the day. She put me in jazz. It turned my whole life around. I learned Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, also fell in love with Gershwin and Quincy Jones. Then I was like, okay, I want to be a composer. So the idea for me in the beginning was like, I wanted to be like the first Haitian composer to ever play Carnegie Hall. That was my dream. I had no other dream. I wasn't trying to be fit. I didn't even, all I knew was like, if I can become like this crazy jazz musician, I can be the next thing. And so everyone that's listening to this, it's so funny because years later, I did play Carnegie Hall. It was Wyclef and friends at Carnegie Hall. So definitely check that out. But I've never heard music in a box. I don't really know what that means. So when someone says this is rock and roll or this is country and you know this is rave, this is, my brain never registered it like that as a kid, which is weird. It just registers it like this music is cool and I don't like this kind of music.
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah, but you know, I know this isn't exactly what you're talking about there, but you still, you know, as far as genres goes, you did predict something. You saw it coming. You know, one of the greatest songs that that, as far as I care, is "Gone to November." It's one of my favorite songs of all time.
oh,
Yeah, there is a line in there where you say, "Hip hop turns to the future rock." I mean, it's like you saw it coming, that the flip was going to happen. That, you know,
yeah.
what was reigning supreme in the mainstream was about to happen. Why did you know? Because you were completely right.
Hip hop turns to the future of rock as I smash a pumpkin. Well, what happens is the thing that rock had where, so as hip hop kids, right, we still rockers. And I think that that's the part that people did not understand at the time. Like, we still was punkers. I think that they didn't get that at the time. I think that because of what how the media portrays it, right, and the separation of music, right, it was hard to go, okay, he's listening to, is that Bob Dylan sitting in the chair of the Wyclef Jean music video? What the heck is his connection with Dylan? Like, they're not like seeing this yet. You see what I'm saying? And then, so what I want people to know is, like, when we say like we hip hoppers, right? Like, understand that that's the culture, that's the way of life, that's how we come up. Now, the idea of what music we're listening to, right, is, I don't care if it's Too Short or Wyclef Jean or E40 or Gunner, we all know Nirvana. Like, this is so important. Like, I know Yes, Owner of a Lonely Heart, and I know how Yes came from classical music to orchestrate into rock. You know, we know Metallica. And I think that when I said, like, hip hop's the, you know, like the future is coming. The future, I was speaking about this gumbo that you see today. Like, so when you hear like a trap kid and you hear the melodies, you can go back on a punk record and you hear these melodies. The lifestyle, the fashion, like the movement, like look at Young Thug's cover in a dress that's like David Bowie, you know what I mean? So all of this we saw coming because the gumbo, the true gumbo of rock and roll, is like part of hip hop. And I think that when we talk about Little Richard versus Elvis, like, you could go on, when you telling me about the blues, man, I don't separate, you know, Muddy Waters from Johnny Cash. Like, it's, you know, or, you know, so that's just how I saw it, you know?
Yeah, which was completely evident. I'll back up a little bit too. Before Gone to November and the Carnival record, we should bring up, because the score, the Fuji's, a masterpiece of a record, is on its 25th anniversary this year.
Yeah.
And all of that was evident in there. And again, you know, coming from a kid, a white kid in the middle of Kentucky, to have an album speak to me so hard as what that record did right there, it's probably it's probably an obvious question. I'm going to go ahead and ask it because it's an obvious question. But what made this a masterpiece? Why does it still connect today in the way that it does?
Well, I think that one thing about the Fugees that people don't get was the mixture of culture. So you had Lauren from the suburbs, like straight up in the suburban like area, and she literally would come to the hood, the booger, where, you know, our neighbors was the alley rats. You know what I mean? The crack house in the back with the baby kids. You know, then you had like me and Prize, who were in this gospel church, you know what I'm saying to you? So I think that, and at the same time, they used to call us thug nerds, right? Because they'd be like, yo, so I think that whether, if you was like this, if someone was like a nerdy kid or someone was like in the hood, you know, we literally, there's like, okay, Zealots, right? So take the song like the Zealots, and let me see if I can remember this. I said, I haunt MCs like Mephistopheles, bringing swords of Damocles. Secret Service keep a close watch as if my name was Kennedy, right? So Mephistopheles, the first time I heard that was on the Police, Synchronicity. That's the first time I heard that word, and I went in the dictionary and I was checking it out. And I think that's where we connected without us knowing each other, because it's sort of like you was hearing words, you was hearing sounds as if it was like, is this shit Pink Floyd, The Wall? Or this was like the first hip hop album where you would hear certain words and you can click with it and identify with it. Even like dudes on real high level of chemistry, when I'm like, measure planets by parallax. You know what I'm saying? Like dudes is like, even like today, like when I see like, you know, kids who's like my friends today, like, you know, the nerds that are taking like, you know, rockets to space or working in NASA. like friends of mine, and they're like, yo, man, this line right here, it was sort of like the score was the bridge between the suburbs and the hood, and putting it like, we have AI today, but this was before the AI could put the thug and the nerd together in one brain. You know what I mean?
And it did. I mean, it works so well. It's still working today. And to look back and then obviously we have hindsight at this point, but to see you all did, you put out a masterpiece and then it was gone. Everybody went their separate ways, and you've all gone on to do amazing things solo wise too. So I'll ask hypothetically, what would a third album have sounded like from the Fugees after that?
I think that the thing with the Fugees is the power is that the reason why the score still resonate, because we said we're not gonna do music, we're gonna create a movement. Mm-hmm. So I think that the reason why a lot of, think about it, like Lauren went on and did the Miseducation classic album. I went in and did Someone Please Call 911, Hips Don't Lie, Maria Maria. All, so those kind of songs I knew wouldn't fit on a Fuji album at the time. So we spaced out. I think looking back today, I think like a third Fuji album would definitely be in the realm of eclectic, because that's always what we've been. I think it would just be a continuation of that New Orleans gumbo.
Well, I'll skip ahead more to the present these days then. Again, you did a handful of single releases last year, and all of them were very powerful. Of course, all of them were speaking to what was happening all around us that we were seeing. The one thing I'll put you in that I didn't see other artists doing, and I'll pick out a song, Immortal. You know, here's a song that's released at a point where all of us as Americans are very into ourselves, maybe had our own head up our asses. We're not paying attention to the rest of the world anyway, you know, because there was some big shit happening here. That wasn't the case with Immortal. I mean, you were looking out, you were looking at bombings in the rest of the world, and that's something that you've always done as well, is to make sure that you're talking about things that are happening well beyond our borders. I guess, could you talk a little bit about that song and what it means to what's happening, you know, still going on right now?
Yeah, so once again, you know, to my idol, Bob Marley, you know, or I haven't even mentioned Bono from U2, which I should, another one of my gangster brothers. Right? So the thing about America, right, is that when we are outside of America, we want to come to America because we hear this is the greatest place on earth. When we get to America, right, and despite what people may say about us or whatever, and because sometimes the negative is amplified so much that you can't find a form of positive, like we have in this conversation here. I think that the true America, like the actual core of America, like actually in this modern day society, my daughter who's 16 years old living in America, if something is happening in Lebanon and a bomb goes off, through the power of the internet, they see everything much faster now. And I think that what happens is in America, we only get a few news channels. And these news channels cater towards the user, like the person who's watching it. So you're not going to be watching CNN and it's going to be like, oh, now from Africa, you know, this is what happened. A bombing just went down, because, you know, at the end of the day, or you're not going to be watching. But at the same time, when you outside of America, everybody else reports what's happening in America, right? So I feel that us as artists and us as musicians, us as painters, us as scientists, it's important that we give a global vision of the world, because some kid in Alabama might not be paying attention to what's going on in Lebanon. And remember, a long time ago, people felt like we as Americans were invincible and that nothing could come to our shores, right? And then I say it and I'll stand by it. for America to constantly be better and get better, the rest of the world have to be better. So at the end of the day, if you want to stick out your hands and want to help different people, the first thing they're going to do is look back at your house and says, well, how is your house doing? So when they're looking and we look at the idea of, you know, an officer who takes his knee and he puts it on the neck of a black man who's screaming he can't breathe and for his mom, and we can't address that, and we can't say, you know, we need reform, they need to be a paradigm shift, you know, then we doing ourselves this disservice as Americans. Because when we look, whether if it was Kennedy, whether if it was Martin Luther King, we can debate about who was good, what was not right, but we've come a long way from slavery. And my daughter, who's 16 years old, is America right now. And it's 16. You heard my wife? My wife says she's 14. She's 14, my bad. She's 15. She's about to be 16. Yeah. All right. So my daughter, let's not make her go too fast. That's about to be 16 in March. She has views, and it's very interesting views. It's very powerful. And at the end of the day, she has heavy debates with her friends from the suburbs. And guess what? At the end of the day, they're friends, and they continue having that conversation. So why can't the right and the left do that, right? Why can't we find that space of bipartisan as we move forward to work with each other, right? Because no matter what anybody want to say about the Constitution, the way that we got into the Constitution, everything that you hear that they say, I never hear somebody say, look, we got to the Constitution because of a bipartisan front. And this is very important.
Right.
Like debates, give me liberty, or give me liberty or give me death. You know what I'm saying? I got my wife, she's a historian in the back. So it's sort of like, to get to where we have to get to, conversation is okay. Debate is okay. What's not okay is for us to intimidate each other and to use violence and silence each other's voices. That's not cool.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that becomes more and more clear, and it's unfortunate the time that we're in, is when people do come face to face, usually real conversations actually do and can happen, that we've seen. And here we have just been in a year where that's, exactly the opposite of what can really happen. But as a songwriter, it's not that, of course, not everything's fixed right now. It's not like what's been happening in the past few years is suddenly, with Joe Biden, the switch is flipped. But as a songwriter, what do you expect to be writing about? I don't know if that's a question you can answer off the cuff, but is it sort of the same as what you've been writing, or do you see a turn in the style and in the message?
Well, I think as a songwriter, the number one thing is, the music that we write, passion, romance, love, peace, the idea of how we can get love conquers hate, depression, mental health. All of these issues as a writer doesn't go nowhere, because we're inspired as humans to constantly elevate within the genre. So at the end of the day, if she wakes up and she pop pills every day, and that's her motion, and that's how she moves, Sally got a one-track mind, right? So how do I talk to Sally? And how do I make Sally want to go to a rehab? You know what I'm saying to you? But without telling her she got to go to a rehab, right? The only way I can do that is to tell Sally I was once like you, right? So at the end of the day, you ain't doing nothing that I haven't tried. So it's sort of like, but I don't want to see you die. You know what I mean? I think I'm writing the song right now as we speak, by the way. But but I think, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to constantly talk about and keep talking about. Hold up, let me push this door.
Uh-huh.
1 second. I'm gonna push the door. Yeah. So as songwriters, we're fueled and we're inspired by the human. And I think this is important for people to know that. And the messaging will continue. So after Trump is Joe Biden, right? After Joe Biden will be the next. Will be the next. But we as writers and composers have a lot of work to do. And I think that when we're looking at it, we are at a nation that still needs to be healed, right? At the end of the day, you got people that follow Donald Trump, right? That love Wyclef Jean. And you got people that follow Joe Biden that love Wyclef. But then say like Wyclef says something about Trump, then all of a sudden it's like, F Wyclef, we don't like Wyclef no more. You get what I mean? So, but then they still do like me, right? But because of the politics and the rhetoric, it gets to that. And I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, music can always have, I always say, like, through music and through sports, there's always some form of unification that can happen, for sure.
Right. With all that, then, do you know what comes next for you? I want to point out a few things too. You've just been part of Vic Mensa's Shelter, which was great stuff. What you're doing, you teamed up with Fall Out Boy on Dear Future Self, Hands Up. That was great. A couple years now, or a year or two. What is it? Then we had Back to School Volume 1. You working on Volume 2? What comes next?
Well, what comes next is, I'm focused on the score for my movie, Prince of Port-au-Prince, that got greenlit with Netflix. It's going to be crazy, big budget. I'm excited because anybody who saw Lion King, anybody who's seen Aladdin, who's seen Rio, welcome to Haiti, baby. I am about to, and I say from age 6 to 12, how we escape poverty through imagination. And remember, when we was 10 years old, we saw movies that later when we was 18, we can still watch that was animated and took us back. So I am going to give you it's loosely based off how we escape poverty through imagination. So we're moving forward with this. I'm very excited. I'm also scoring season 4 of The Shah for Showtime with the great Lena Waithe. So when I'm looking on my wall, and I'm like 51 now, so where does Wyclef want to go? Keep in mind, Quincy Jones did not do Michael Jackson Thriller till he was 54. So I want everybody to know this is actually chapter 2 of Wyclef. We just getting started. Y'all can look at my Instagram. I'm still sexy. I'm actually more sexy now than I was younger. I'm still fly, baby, the chocolate man. I'm excited about the field of scoring music. And any body that's listening to this that are composers, right? It's very important. And artists, I want y'all to listen to this. Since the pandemic, the rise of streaming has gone up for not just music, for film. So there's a high demand for music for films. So what I did was I created what is called Sodo Mood Lab, which is the first jingle and scoring company of diversity. And want to start to represent composers of diversity. Like, we need more female composers. They're out there. Why are they not getting? So look forward towards this platform. And also, I don't feel like when you look at the scope of scoring music, I don't think it's fair to the minorities. And I think that they all should get, it should be like fair shot down the line. So excited about those years. And we have some big news coming up about Haiti, which I can't say yet, but I'm very excited where the future's going.
Yeah, look at that. Full circle. Back to the teacher who introduced you to jazz when you said you wanted to be a composer after all of that, and here you are. You're a composer. And you've always been a composer, for what it's worth. We know that. But Now it's got that stamp seal of approval on it.
Definitely, it's so crazy. The first movie I ever scored was Life, Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence, which was nuts. I remember Adam Sandler for 50 First Dates. I did a song called Baby. Then there was the movie Hotel Rwanda, great film. I had got nominated for an Emmy and lost to Mick Jagger. And I told them I would be back. If I'm going to lose to anybody, it's Mick Jagger. All I did was make my ego go up, baby. So I'm back for my Emmy, my Oscar. Y'all going to have to give me everything y'all got to give me. I'm pretty, I'm bad like Ali.
That's a nice reference here because he's buried just right down the road from me. This is Ali right here in Louisville. So
don't better than that.
Wyclef, this has been a lot of fun. It's been an honor completely. I mean, you are one of my biggest musical heroes. Thank you so much for everything that you've pumped out into the world in over 30 years now. I so appreciate it. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it today.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you and everybody listening.
All right. Take care. We'll see you around.
All right, King. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.